What's up, guys? It is John here. In today's video, I'm going to cover some new, about 4 or 5 things that I am implementing in my business. I recently took the OA challenge. I'm still doing it with Chris Grant, and I've learned so much so far. I kind of wanted to tell you, I made a little list here of some of the stuff that I will be implementing, and I figured I would share it with you guys. If you're new to the channel, I'm a 6-figure Amazon seller. I do online arbitrage. I do use books. And my main goal is to help you guys make money selling on Amazon. So if you're into that, please subscribe. And yeah, like the video. I really appreciate it. So let's just get into it. Number one thing that I have learned and have started implementing is test buys. So I was doing test buys before. So I would typically buy between 5, 12, or 18. It just really depends. Amazon loves when you send 18 of one single item. It usually does not split the shipment. But to buy 18 of a unit that you haven't sold before has, at times it's worked out, other times it hasn't. But in the challenge, he was talking about how sometimes he just buys only 3 or 5 items, and it really got me thinking. I really like the idea of doing that, and I have started doing that, and for a couple of reasons. Number one, when you're only buying 3 or 5, you're taking a risk and like putting it way down. So there is a lot of products that I probably would have test bought or bought 3 or 5 of them, but I didn't want to commit to spending like $200 or $300 if I had to buy 10 or 12, because I didn't know if they would sell through or whatever. So being able to buy 3 or 5 or be comfortable with that now has been a real game changer for me. It allows me to buy more product, which gives me more options in the end. And plus, like, one of the best ways to see how quickly something sells or something does sell is to send it to Amazon, see how quickly it sells. So yeah, buying 3 to 5 units per test order, I think is going to be really good for me. And it will be what it will be. If the shipment gets split, so be it. It doesn't, I'm just going to go with that. Number 2, replenishables. So I always thought the definition of replenishables, well, the definition is something you could buy over and over and over again. And I took that to mean that you could buy this thing right here, and you would be able to keep sending inventory, send inventory, selling like 20 or 30 a month or 50 or 100 or whatever. And that's what a replenishable was. But going through the challenge, he was talking about he views replenishables as something that you could buy over and over again, but not at that big of quantity. So he gives some examples of, maybe a replenishable is, I don't know, something for the pool. So it could be a pool toy. Every summer, you could buy that pool toy profitably. You can't do it throughout the year, but it's still technically a replen because you can buy it every summer when the summer rolls around and keep selling it. It doesn't have to be for the whole year. And another part of that is a replenishable does not have to mean that you have to sell 10, 20, 30, 40 of an item. It could mean that maybe every month you could sell 5 of these. And technically, like, that is replenishable. Now, some people will say, well, it's not worth the aggravation to have to almost manage that or prep that. But I use a prep center, so I really don't care. Like, just to order 5 of something and send it to the prep center, not a big deal for me. So I think thinking about replenishables differently. I know when we all buy something, we're like, oh, wow, I wonder if I can replenish it. How many can I sell? Whatever, I'm really taking into mind, hey, maybe I could just buy this during Christmas or maybe just during summertime, and really keeping that in mind and being cool with being like, oh, I can only sell 5 a month and I could still make money. And we're not talking about like a dollar profit. It would have to be like somewhere in like the $5 to $6 range or whatever. I'm going to get to that in a second. But that is kind of how I am rethinking about replenishables. Number three, Chris Grant is a big believer in going wide and not deep. So a lot of times, I know what I was trying to do when I was first doing online arbitrage is find products that I could buy 20, 30, 40, 50 and sell that in a month. I came close. I think I bought one or two products I've definitely sold probably about 40 or 50 a month, but they are no longer profitable. But and what happened was I was really banking on that product to continue to do well. So what happens? You get lazy sourcing. So I wasn't sourcing as much. I was like, oh, I could just keep buying this and hit my spend goal, just buying this item. And when you're going deep, deep meaning probably like 20 or 30 a month, you also open up yourself to a ton of risk. If you don't have a lot of different products, and this is what happened to me, that you could buy profitably, that cycle through, you could be in a really bad shape. So when my two best selling, or about 3 or 4 items I had, kind of stopped selling, that I was moving like 40, 50 items per month, when they went away and I had nothing to replace them with, that was not good, because if I can't buy that and don't have something ready to go, and yes, you could find something, but it's going to take you like a week or 2 weeks to kind of get it back in the rotation. So having items that you could sell, I don't know, 5 to 10 times, and having multiple of those that you could sell, and constantly having options, was definitely changed my mind about that. I know a lot of people want to just be able to buy a ton of one thing, but it could also be risky. I know I went super deep on one thing, and I barely broke out of there even at the end. I think I had to like sell 50 units, and I only made like a quarter on each unit. Grateful that I got out, but yeah, so wide and not deep. Number four, he talks a lot about having ASIN goals. So a lot of us have spend goals, and I never really thought about almost ASIN goals. So how he breaks it down is he talks about having a certain amount of ASINs. So let's just do the math. So he said, oh, if you have 100 ASINs, that could make you about $50 on average profit per month. That's $5,000 a month. Now, obviously, some of us want to do better than that. Some of us are cool with that. Whatever. Doesn't matter. But how you get to that 5K profit is much different. So having 100 ASINs would be a lot of options, which is great. And in those, if you could have them totally make $50 or at least $50, you would have a really good business. So an example, you could sell 5 of an item that makes you $10, and there's your 50. You could have 20 of one item that makes you $3. That's 60. And by doing this, it just makes you think differently about how it works. For me, I always looked at it as spend goal, and having to find items that just sell a ton. I could just keep buying. And while that might be great and could, like, obviously that's good, but it could, at the end of the day, if something goes wrong with that, you'd be kind of stuck there. So I like the idea. It's also much easier to break down in your head. So he did some math. I don't have it in front of me. But basically, you could really do the math and say, okay, how can I find 100 that make $50 profit per month? It makes it much easier. So if you said that you want to get there in a month, find that, you just do the math on that. So you'd have to find 25 products a month, which doesn't really sound that bad, right? Or I'm sorry, a week rather, which could be a little, it could be a lot. It really just depends. Um, but yeah, I really like this idea. I'm definitely implementing this idea because I really do think it just makes it easier to break down for me. And I'm just thinking like, oh, if I can make $50 on this per month, I feel it's definitely worth it because that really brings some stuff in that, like I was saying before, like if this was like $50, I wouldn't want to buy 10 off the bat. I would be cool buying, I don't know, three of them or whatever, two of them. But maybe those two like sell it right away. And I'm like, oh wow, like I could sell through a lot more of these. Or I buy two and they don't sell. And I'm like, oh, well, this doesn't really sell. Like, I'm glad I only bought two or three of these. So I think having the async goal is kind of really going to be helpful. Number 5 is not to worry about the number of sellers on the actual listing when you're reviewing it. Now, it is important to look to see who's owning the buy box, if someone is dominating it. You just really want to see if there's some room for you in there. But his point is that you are just really, when you're doing your, this is for test buys. When you're doing your test buy, you just want to see if the product sells, how quickly it sells, how much you might be able to sell. I know for me, when I'm looking at products prior to this, I was looking at, well, if there's this many people on the listing, and I come on the listing, and I would only be able to sell 10, or I would only be able to sell 5. I don't know if I want to buy this because I'd only be able to sell 5. While that's all like good and great, you don't exactly know how much it actually sells. Like, yes, you can look at Keepa and all that stuff, but until you actually send in the product and it starts to sell on Amazon, you're not sure. So there could be a couple instances where you send in 5 of something, and as soon as it hits the warehouse, they all sell out. Then you could be like, oh, wow, I could definitely sell more of these. And then maybe you order again, maybe you order 10 this time, and same idea. They sell out in 2 or 3 days. So then now you kind of have to do a little bit of math, how much you might be able to sell. And then maybe the next time you send in 20, and it takes 2 weeks to sell. And then maybe you make it all the way up to 40 and it takes a month, and that's almost what you could sell in a month. Sometimes the data on the Keepa just doesn't make sense, or it's a low estimate, and you never know how much you could move. But I really like that idea of being able to do a smaller test buy, not really take sellers into consideration, because at that time, it doesn't really matter. Another point to bring upon this, it doesn't really matter how many sellers are on the listing, it's how much inventory they actually have. So there could be 20 sellers on a listing, and if they only have one of the item in stock, all of them, then it doesn't really matter. Because, I mean, if it sells like 50 a month, because there still should be another 30 units that have to be sold, so you could bring in some of those units and see if you could fill the gap there and if there's room for you. So those are my big takeaways so far. I'll definitely be going into more. I just really like the challenge. I'm really happy I did it. Still have another, I think, 5 days to it. So number 1, we'll just recap real quick. Do test buys. They don't have to be big. They could be 3 to 5. It doesn't really matter. You just really want to see if the product will move, and it mitigates your risk. Replenishables. They don't have to be something you buy that you could sell 20, 30 of a month. It could be an item that you sell 2 or 3 every month, or 5 every month, whatever. Going wide, not deep. You could do whatever you want, but having more ASINs or products that you could send to Amazon, the better. Mitigates risk. You have more opportunities to make sales, and more, honestly, the ability to test more and know what really sells and what doesn't. Number 5, setting ASIN goals. Looking for ASINs that could make you at least $50 a month, whether that's selling 5 units, 10 units, 20 units, or who knows, maybe just 5 units, and being good with that, especially if you're using a prep center. And then number 5 is not really taking sellers into consideration. You are on for the test buy. In general, yes, when you're buying bigger, you definitely want to take in consideration. But when you're doing a test buy, you just want to see if the product will sell. So that's all I got for you guys today. Let me know what you think in the comments, which one you think could have the most impact on your business, or what your favorite one was. Please like the video, please share it, and please subscribe to the channel. It would mean the world to me, and I will see you guys in the next video.